You can't really argue with that, can you? But there is a conspiracy theory for everything, so I'm sure you've heard the conspiracy theories about JFK. Just about everybody's been accused of shooting him at some point. More recently, there are conspiracy theories about the 9/11 attacks and the death of Princess Diana. There are conspiracy theories that the US government faked the moon landing and that they're covering up the existence of aliens. I could go on. The Freemasons are up to no good, the New World Order is taking over, and the Queen is an alien reptile. I could go on, but I won't. The important point is that there is every event, everything you can possibly think of, there is a conspiracy theory for that. Second World War somewhere. Just about everything can be incorporated into a vast conspiracy theory together. And the nice thing about this, from a what's that? Yeah, everything. Everything's in there somewhere. This diagram goes on farther. I've trimmed it down to fit on the screen here. There's more. The nice thing about this, from a psychological point of view, is that it means that people don't just pick and choose the conspiracies they believe in. They tend to believe everything or nothing to some extent. So we can measure this. We can treat it as a personality trait. And we can measure it, and we can see what this personality trait of conspiracism or conspiracist ideation tends to correlate with. And so one kind of category of variables that have been looked at are what we call demographics. And these refer to people's kind of circumstances, things like age and gender and occupation and income and education. And slightly surprisingly, none of these kind of variables seem to correlate reliably with belief in conspiracy theories. So this kind of goes against some common stereotypes of conspiracy theorists as being sort of poor and uneducated middle-aged males and their cats. Conspiracy theories tend to be equally prevalent amongst all kind of strata of society. Everybody is susceptible to believing conspiracy theories. One slight exception to this is research within the US tends to find that ethnicity, being a member of an ethnic minority, tends to correlate with believing in conspiracy theories. And so this is a potentially interesting finding. It may be that certain conspiracy theories are simply more relevant to minority groups. So in the US, African Americans tend to endorse conspiracy theories about the assassination of Martin Luther King more strongly than do Caucasians. But we tend to find this finding for all conspiracy theories, regardless of relevance to race or ethnicity. So it may be a case of ethnic minorities facing more discrimination on a daily basis and having generally a little bit more reason to distrust the government and other authorities. We don't really know. And it may be just a case of, it's a product of the unique racial history of the US, because none of this research has been replicated outside of the US. We don't know how generalizable it is, but it may be interesting. So a different avenue of research concerns not people's kind of circumstances, but their psychological makeup, in particular their personality traits. So we're interested in what kind of people tend to believe conspiracy theories. Why do some people believe and not others? Why is it that Mulder believes in conspiracy theories but not Scully? What is it about that guy? So there are three kind of clusters of personality traits that we tend to find correlations with. And I've illustrated each one with a relevant image from the X-Files, which I thought was quite clever. So the first cluster of personality traits that we find correlations with hinges around paranoia. So we tend to find correlations with things like lack of trust of everybody, of your friends and your neighbors, of the police and the government. We tend to find correlations with pessimism about the future, with cynicism, with defiance of authority of any kind. And it seems like what all these personality traits have in common is mild paranoia. People who are kind of mildly paranoid tend to believe more in conspiracy theories. And I think it's important to point out that this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Being a little bit paranoid and suspicious of others could be beneficial to your well-being. If somebody is scheming against you, if there is a conspiracy out to get you, then being a little bit paranoid could help you discover it and save you from harm. I think the problem is when people become a little bit too paranoid and perhaps they start perceiving conspiracies which aren't there. So the second kind of cluster of personality traits revolves around openness, what psychologists refer to as openness to new and unusual information. So we find correlations with belief in the paranormal and superstitions and new age ideas, and with what we call the big five trait of openness, which is basically being open, receptive to any kind of unusual information. And so it seems like people who are generally open are more likely to seek out information relating to conspiracy theories and ultimately more likely to be receptive to that information. And again, I think it's worth pointing out, not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's good to be a little bit open-minded, and perhaps you can discover things that really are out there and important to know. But again, it's a matter of finding the right balance, right? I think you want to be open, but not so open-minded that your brain falls out, right? As the saying goes. And so the third kind of cluster of personality traits revolves around powerlessness. So we find that people who report feeling low in self-efficacy, who feel like they don't have control over their own circumstances, we find that people who are low in self-esteem and are generally dissatisfied with life tend to endorse conspiracy theories more strongly than do other people. And this can be a stable personality trait, but it can also be a sort of temporal, short-lasting feeling. So researchers have temporarily induced lack of control in people by asking them to remember a time when they lacked control over their own circumstances, and they found that in that moment, people were more likely to endorse conspiracy theories. So this seems like, for these people, for most people, that is an aversive, unpleasant psychological state to be in. And so conspiracy theories may offer a kind of explanatory tool. So if the truth is out there, then maybe it helps to explain what I'm kind of going through in here. So just to recap the personality traits, we find correlations with paranoia, lack of self-efficacy, and openness. But it's worth reiterating that these are based on quite a few findings, and it's all kind of preliminary, and some of the relationships are quite small. And the other important thing to point out is that we don't know the direction of causality. So we don't know whether people who are paranoid are more drawn towards conspiracy theories, or whether people who come to believe conspiracy theories may become more paranoid. Because if you think the government's out to get you, that might make you a little bit paranoid, right? I think the most likely thing is that the relationship is kind of reciprocal. It goes both ways. And so more paranoid people are more disposed to conspiracy theories, and they become more paranoid and maybe more disposed to conspiracy theories. And the same might go for openness and for powerlessness as well. But all quite preliminary, don't really know.